Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we have a conversation with the new president of the Kansas Farm Bureau, Joe Newland, a farmer from Wilson County. Also have updates from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, along with updates from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In agricultural news, USDA last week mailed out the 2022 Census of Agriculture paper questionnaires to all known agriculture producers across the nation and Puerto Rico. Producers in the states have received their survey codes last month with an invitation to respond online. And if you have yet to respond, you now have the option to complete the Ag Census online at agcounts.usda.gov, or you can do it by mail. Producers who have already received and responded online don't need to respond again. The deadline for those responses, though, February 6th next year. The Census of Agriculture remains the nation's only comprehensive and impartial ag data for every state, county, and U.S. territory. Responding to the Census of Agriculture required by law, that same law does require that NASS keep all information confidential. The Flickner Innovation Farm hosting a January 12th workshop to present up-to-date outcomes for the farm's technology implementation and projects studying natural resource use. There'll also be a presentation from NASA about how their programs can benefit farm management. The workshop will take place at the Inman Community Center and will feature a range of experts speaking in a variety of subjects, things like introducing groundwater nitrate dynamics, protein sampling, grain quality, using cover crops for soil health, irrigation management, and more. Organizers say the investigations from Kansas State University and the University of Kansas researchers, along with local producers and industry partners, helping to fine-tune current and emerging technologies that conserve water use while improving water quality and soil health. The program will get underway at 10 in the morning and about 3 p.m. The event free, lunch provided. Now, if you need more information, including to register, you can go online at the Kansas Center for Agricultural Resources and the Environment, or KCARE. If you're interested in attending, you need to register by January the 9th. The Innovation Farm, a partnership between the Flickner family, university scientists, watershed specialists, and industry leaders. Together, they're conducting studies on a large farm setting to identify the most efficient technologies and techniques for Kansas producers to use on their own farm. Well, it is Christmas Eve, and it's time to gather with family and friends and exchange gifts and good wishes, but more importantly, a time to reflect on the greatest gift ever. That's the birth of the Christ child and the message of peace and hope that fills each one of our lives. It all started in a hay manger with animals and continues to bring comfort to many around the world. So let's hope in the new year we renew the spirit of good tidings of great joy among all people. Merry Christmas. We'll be back with more in a moment.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
Well, we're pleased to be joined by the new elected president of the Kansas Farm Bureau, Wilson County farmer Joe Newland. Hi, Joe.
How's it going today, Ken?
Well, doing quite well. Thanks so much for joining us on as we get ready to wrap up the year. But also, you're starting a new position advocating for farmers, and no stranger to the Kansas Farm Bureau. But let's learn a little bit more about who Joe Newland is.
Well, that's not too hard. You know, my wife, Dana, and I, we live down by Neodesha in the southeast corner of the state. We run a diversified farming operation. We raise corn, wheat, and soybeans. We have a cow-calf operation. And we're lucky enough to have our two oldest sons, Justin and Wade, and now a grandson that just recently came back to the farm full time. So truly is a family-run operation. So we're very happy about that.
Well, Joe, as we wrap up this year, looking into 2023, many of us will look back on 2022 as that had a lot of highs and lows, but we're definitely starting the new year with quite a few challenges in farm country that didn't necessarily get solved.
Well, that's for sure. You know, with the floods that happened in the eastern part of the state early in the spring, turning into quite a drought situation. And then, of course, the major drought continuing in the west. What the producers have faced all year long is quite a challenge. And you're right, it's not solved yet. The stock waters holding capacity is low. And with these freezing temperatures coming in now and into the last part of the week, it's going to be brutal, you know, for a lot of areas.
Well, part of this that you come into not only as a farmer, but spending a little bit of time in the Kansas legislature, so have a full understanding of the political process. And I understand you've already made your first kind of official trip back to D.C.
We did. It was a great trip, getting to visit with all but one of the Kansas delegation. You know, we're extremely well represented on the federal level. Very happy to be a part of that discussion as we move forward, and then getting to meet with the American Farm Bureau making policy there.
Absolutely. And so the Kansas Farm Bureau annual meeting, that's where you were elected. Also, a lot of policy decisions were made. And so those policy books are kind of the roadmap, if you will, for the Kansas legislature that will gather early in January. And then the Congress will go back also after the first of the year. You all will be in Puerto Rico at the Farm Bureau meeting, the national meeting, to look at national policy. So, Joe, I want to take a quick break, come back. We're going to talk about what you see as those top issues, not only in the state, but as well in the federal level. We'll do that in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Joe Newland, Wilson County farmer, the president of the Kansas Farm Bureau. Joe, boy, as you turn the calendar in 2023, you're going to hit the ground running. Lots of issues going on. Let's first touch some of those state issues. I would guess the number one issue that came out of the Farm Bureau annual meeting, looking at what might happen in Topeka, is going to deal with water.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we finished up last year's session kind of fighting off a major bill that would have been pretty detrimental to a lot of producers, especially in the West. We have a lot of challenges on that front, as you well know, Ken, and we need to be able to face those directly. We're in constant communications, not only with our own staff, but with other legislators across the state. So looking forward to that debate, those discussions that maybe help alleviate some of those angst that producers face right now.
The governor's also come out with a tax plan, a lot of different things. I'm sure taxes, education, and just overall spending were also things that were tackled there in Topeka.
Well, absolutely. Property tax is always a huge concern of producers across the state. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. What we do with the new food tax reductions and where those incomes come from if those taxes are reduced even further. So, yeah, a lot of communication needs to be done, and we'll continue that avenue and see how this team works on those issues for this organization.
American Farm Bureau will be meeting in Puerto Rico for the annual meeting. I'm sure I can think of two issues right off the top. One, the Farm Bill. Two, farm labor reform that looks like did not get passed before Congress will wrap up this year. This farm bill is one, though, that everybody's focusing on, especially in agriculture.
Absolutely. And the main criteria that we're looking at is crop insurance, making sure that we have that bolstered up for the future. We absolutely have to have that in place in order to protect our producers and what changes they might want to make to that. So we'll see what happens. And it's just that important to our producers, that we do that. And of course, labor is always a huge concern, especially in our meat packing plants. So we have to be very mindful of what comes out of the organization on the American Farm Bureau level too.
All right, Joe, as we wrap this up, anything else that folks need to be aware of that's on the radar of Kansas Farm Bureau as we look at the new year?
I think that if we take a look at what happens with water, I think that's going to be our biggest push, for sure, within the state. Protecting those waterways, protecting our usage in the West is what we need to be very mindful of.
All right, Joe, we appreciate the time to visit with us. We wish you, Dana, and your crew a very Merry Christmas, and we look forward to talking with you in the future as more updates. And let's pray for moisture, okay?
Absolutely. Ken, it's always a pleasure visiting with you, and good luck in the new session coming up.
All right, thank you so much. Joe Newland, the newly elected president of the Kansas Farm Bureau, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the soybean checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
If we really are what we eat, then Americans are 10% soy. Whether in chips, candy bars, or dairy substitutes, this ubiquitous grain accounts for 1 out of every 10 calories that we consume as a nation, often in the form of byproducts like soy oil or soy protein isolate. And it all begins with a bean.
We've been cutting soybeans today all day. They're yielding pretty good. They went through a couple weeks with no water and or not enough rain, and I didn't think they'd be as good as they are.
Third-generation farmer Sonny Eaton operates Coleraine Farms on about 3,000 acres on Maryland's eastern shore.
We plant about 1,400 acres of wheat, 1,350 acres of corn, and around 250 acres of early beans. And that's all we grow is corn, wheat, and soybeans.
On a warm afternoon in late October, he's busy harvesting the latter with help from 3 employees, one of whom hasn't even reached double digits.
My 9-year-old grandson is driving the grain cart, and he drives for us every Saturdays and Sundays when he's off from school, and he's just a good kid. He's been driving a lot of equipment ever since he was little.
Sonny grows multiple varieties of soybeans, including a high oleic bean, genetically engineered to produce oil that can withstand multiple fryings without going rancid. But today he's harvesting a less specialized variety and using monitors in his combine to make sure everything looks okay.
It's not too dry or too wet right now. They're testing 9, you can see on the tester.
That's 9% moisture, well below the threshold of 13% required for storage. In other words, these beans won't have to be dried down before they can be safely stowed away in a grain bin.
We haul about 70,000 bushels of soybeans a year.
Once harvested, the soybeans make their way here to the Purdue Edible Oil Refinery in Salisbury.
So we're processing about 1,600 tons per day of beans that were actually coming into the extraction plant. We start off with the whole soybean, straight from the farm,
Upon arrival, the beans are graded, dried, and stored in one of the facility's many grain bins until
The first process is where we actually crack the beans. The purpose of that is to remove the hulls from the beans.
the super lightweight hulls are separated out and ground into a mill feed for hungry dairy cows. As for the beans themselves,
Now that we have the cracked bean, what we want to do is we want to condition that, make it soft and pliable so that we can get ready to rupture the oil cells. The way we do that is we run these through two big rollers and actually make flakes.
pressing the beans into flake form makes the oil more easily accessible, meaning it's just a quick trip through the extractor, and voila!
That's how you extract the oil out of that, leaving you with basically a white flake, which has the oil removed from it.
The de-oiled flakes are dried and ground up,
This is your finished soybean meal that is used in animal feed rations.
but the oil still has a ways to go.
You're now left with basically a crude soybean oil. You can see there's a solid phase down here where it's naturally fallen out.
Those solids are removed and used to create lecithin, a word you might be familiar with if you've ever taken the time to read the ingredients list on your favorite sweet treat.
That's sold to Nestle, Mars.
Meanwhile, the degummed oil is refined, bleached, deodorized,
And then from that base stock, then you can mix it with another palm oil, with a canola oil, or whatever a customer would like.
giving them the specific traits they're looking for in their end product, whatever it might be. Finally, it's out the door, or rather, tube.
Typically on a normal week, we're anywhere between 6 to 6.5 million pounds of oil that will leave this facility.
And while soy oil in general has dozens of different potential uses, ranging from ink to biodiesel, this refinery specializes in edible oil.
Potato chips, pretzel companies, tasty cake.
Chew on that, why don't you?
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Marita Hauser has served farmers, her local community, and the state of Kansas for 30 years. With a passion to advocate for the agricultural industry, Hauser has contributed to Kansas Farm Bureau on county, state, and national levels, holding various positions, including as a member of the Grant County Farm Bureau, 9 years as the Women's Leadership Chair, and time on American Farm Bureau Women's Leadership Committee. She's also served on the Resolutions Committee, was the Outstanding Young Farm Woman in 1988, and was honored as a Farm Family Winner in 1995. Congratulations, Marita!
Looking back on 2022, the team at the Kansas Department of Agriculture wants to express our appreciation to you, the farmers, ranchers, agribusiness owners, and leaders across the Kansas agriculture industry. The hard work that you put in every day of the year is the driving force that has made agriculture the state's largest industry, employer, and economic driver. And we are proud to serve you and to advocate for you here in Kansas and throughout the nation and the world. 2022 has been a busy time for Kansas agriculture. As the year began, many Kansans were in the early days of recovering from the widespread wildfires that struck the state in mid-December of last year. Burned barns, lost fences, livestock deaths, and damage to crops and rangeland all meant that victims of the fires faced a long road of recovery. February brought the news that highly pathogenic avian influenza had been confirmed in the U.S., and Kansas joined the states facing active cases in March. By fall, 9 cases of HPAI had been confirmed in domestic poultry in Kansas as the outbreak continued throughout the year. But the year will be remembered for positive things as well, as we reported that Kansas ag exports had exceeded the $5 billion mark for the first time in decades. The Ag Stress program unveiled a statewide campaign to destigmatize mental health in the agriculture industry. And KDA was awarded a grant to participate in a USDA program that will purchase and distribute Kansas-grown and produced foods to underserved communities and families across Kansas. And we look forward to rolling out that program next year. Many other issues have kept the Kansas Department of Agriculture team busy this year, including issues in water resources, pet animal facilities, specialty crops, and soil health. and we look forward to many more opportunities to work together with all of you in 2023 as we share our dedication to Kansas agriculture.
Sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
I grow food-grade sorghum for all kinds of special uses, mainly for human consumption, so it's very important for me to be as sustainable as I possibly can and have the best grain I possibly can.
When people start talking about sustainability, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To us, that means using the least amount of pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that we can, using fertilizer as needed in the smallest amounts possible to grow the crops we want to grow. The food that we produce and the grain we produce, it goes a long ways and touches a lot of different people. So the better we can do that with the less impact on the environment, it's really better for everyone.
The big thing now is kind of the sustainability aspect of agriculture, but it's not a cookie cutter thing, because what I do, you go 20 miles from here and it's not going to work the same it's going to work here. The soil types are different, topography's different, even the climate's different enough. It's something you've just kind of got to have a general framework, develop and work towards the specifics for your particular operation.
So western Kansas, we sit on top of a large area of water, like a lake, a pool, deep down in the ground. And for generations and years, we've depended on that to water the crops with irrigation or sprinkler systems to make those crops that needed water flourish. However, over time, that has continued to go down. So we're having to think outside the box. How do we work without that water system? Sorghum's root system works really well in that, as well as being able to produce a crop even when we don't have the moisture we desperately need.
We want to leave this farm better than when we got here. It's important to us, and sorghum's a big part of that. It really helps us with winter and water erosion over the winter with the root structure it has, provides a lot of residue, also controls evaporation during the summer, and that the residue is really beneficial for the next crop.
If we couldn't be sustainable, we wouldn't be farmers today. So for us, sustainability is just really second nature. We are going to give the land the best that we can because we want the very best off of it. It's also the sustainability of our livelihood, of generational farming, the ones that have done it for years and know the best way to produce the best crops.
If I were to not have sorghum in my rotation, it would definitely flatten my production, my sustainability. Everything would just be flattened out. And sorghum, as well as it grows in western Kansas, I can't imagine taking it out of my rotation.
Sorghum literally checks all the boxes. If you want to be sustainable, it works there. If you want to grow in a dry climate, it works there. If you want to grow in a not so dry climate, it works there. So it's so versatile, and especially where it can put back in. We're trying to figure out how to cut back on inputs, and sorghum itself inputs into the ground where other crops just take from. For us and our rotation and many others, sorghum is the resource conserving crop.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
In anticipation of calving season, the Kansas State University Department of Animal Sciences and Industry and K-State Research and Extension are planning a series of calving schools in January. The program will outline the stages of the normal calving process, as well as provide tips on how to handle difficult situations and when to intervene to assist the cow or heifer. Presenters also will demonstrate proper use of calving equipment on a life-size cow and calf model. According to K-State Extension veterinarian A.J. Tarpoff, there also will be discussions on when to examine cows for calving problems, when to call a vet for help, and how to best care for young calves. Tarpoff said the program is beneficial to all, regardless of experience level. Meeting dates and locations include January 3rd in Greensburg, January 10th in Ellsworth, January 12th in Fredonia, and January 19th in Mankato. More information, including how and when to RSVP for a particular location, can be found at ksubeef.org.
Good morning, I'm Darren Van Vactor with Pinion Risk Management. The holidays typically mean lower trade volume, especially the closer you get to an extended weekend. The next 2 weekends will be 3-day weekends for the trade. Having 48 hours off for the markets has been more than enough for some wild moves in 2022. So 3 full days of no trade in a typically lighter volume environment, and you have the recipe for some volatility. Probably not a bad idea to have some resting orders overhead, as some of these moves have been short-lived in the past. March corn continues to hover around the 650 level, beans in the upper 14s, while wheat is trying its best to form a bottom. This week's frigid forecast could provide some additional weather premiums, but it would probably be more meaningful if we were a little closer to breaking dormancy. Speaking of the cold weather, cattle producers have done their best to prepare for it. Keep in mind, when many of us are in the comfort of our homes with family and friends, others will be tending to livestock and doing their best to ensure the well-being of those animals. It takes a lot and it does not go unnoticed, so thank you to all. As usual, if you have questions about the markets, give us a call at 888-452-8751. I'm Darren Van Vactor. Be safe and have a Merry Christmas.
That's our show this week. Be social with us at KansasAgReport.net or our other social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Catch me on the radio all across the state of Kansas every day on the Ag Network. We'll see you back here next week for another Kansas Ag Report. Thanks for watching.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.